All right, here we go. Share my screen. Got share sound. Oh, all right. Load this up. Oh, what did I click on? All right, here we go. Oh, that was not the start of the slide. All right, so successful strategies uh for teaching students with learning disabilities. Um, really enough, this year I've been in a classroom with students with different learning disabilities. So I've had a bird's eye view of watching how some of these things work, how they are being incorporated by some teachers, how some of them are not incorporating them. So I think it's imperative that we when we're teaching different students with learning disabilities that we are incorporating a lot of different elements to assist them in better understanding the material. Um, for me, one of the things that stuck out was breaking learning down into small steps and using visual aids. Um, I've heard somebody say this before. I don't know if it was Dr. H or not, saying that I've heard somebody say that there's no such thing as a visual learner. Maybe I know for myself as a learner, visual aids help me to remember what I'm doing or what we're talking about. Um, a friend of mine, they graduated, my wife and her best friend, one of her best friends at the time, graduated college in uh 2002, and her first apartment, um the code to get into that apartment gate was 1963. Now you'd be like, what that's got to do with anything? Well, I'm a historian, and the visual of the events that happened November 22nd, 1963, with the assassination of John F. Kennedy would always stick in my head. So anytime when we used to go to visit her at that apartment, I already knew the code because of November 22nd, 1963. So um, visual aids have always been important to me and to helping me to remember and to understand the next steps per se. So breaking things down, simplifying complex tasks by breaking them down. Use visual like diagrams, pictures to reinforce learning. Um, I love comic books. And when Dr. H used the analogy of the was it the Batman, like one of those analogies or one of those comics he used, that really helped me to understand something, and it even helped me break it down because of the concept of the superheroes. So I really fully believe that breaking words down, especially in social studies, especially in ELA and other subjects that I've taught, breaking those things down for myself is important, but even I have seen the light bulb go off for students when you teach them how to take things down and break it down into smaller chunks, for them to not try to eat the entire elephant. Take the elephant apart and eat the elephant in small bites. So So breaking things down, I like to say breaking them down to their atom. How far can you break it down to make it palatable for a learner of any age demographic for that matter? Um, and then relating it to something that people understand, relating it to things that they know, relating it to things that they find exciting. This helps the information to be more digestible for all parties involved. Feedback. Um, I feel that it's important, and I really didn't understand this concept my first year or so teaching because um I was new and I didn't quite understand how it flowed. I like to look at it also like navigation. When you are, you put the address to a place in your phone, and while you're driving, it tells you to go left or go right. And then if you miss the turn, it reroutes you. That's an immediate feedback. So when you're dealing with learners, even learners that are not considered to have different types of learning disabilities, but especially those learners who have those disabilities, it is very imperative, especially now with some of the students that I deal with, that we redirect that learner almost immediately. Because if we wait too far, they've missed the turn and now they're lost. But if they miss the turn or miss the step, in the sequence of steps, an immediate feedback on where they are or what they need to do is important. So give timely and constructive feedback to guide progress. First of all, guiding does not mean giving them the answer. A guide is a person who leads, but at the same time allows you to not only follow, but also process those things. Also, being constructive. Now, it is difficult for some people to take quote unquote constructive criticism because what I've learned especially in the autistic spectrum, um, the autistic mind takes criticism as an offense uh versus actually taking it in good standing. An autistic mind tends to assume that you're attacking them when at the end of the day you may just be trying to make them better. So giving constructive feedback where that feedback is not perceived as a attack but more of as a, hey, look, you did this right, let's do this. More of a constructive or positive feedback. Then teach students how to assess their own work for growth. One of the teachers that I was allowed to, I was in her room for about a few weeks this year. What she did was she would give students an assignment, have them do the assignment, and then when they were finished, she would allow them to look at the answer key and um, check their work. Now, that has a, 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 a good and a bad um, positioning, because if you're not paying attention to the students, a lot of the students may struggle in areas, but they are smart enough to know how to correct their answers when they're using the answer key. But allowing a student to see where they went wrong and then giving them the constructive feedback in that process also helps the brain or the student's brain to process the information and to be able to get a better grasp. Now, for some of our learners, especially for those of for our learners who do have some difficulty, this is a repetitive thing. It's not something you can do one day and let off the next day. This is something that must be a routine or a ritual so that they can rest assured that there aren't so many different changes, so that their brains can also be allowed to digest the information at the pace while, keeping up to their best ability or keeping up with where they need to go to reach their goals. Sensory. I one of the things that I've found a passion for in education. I shouldn't say found a passion for. One of the things that really has changed my life is the finding of myself. And I did not know any of this until one, I got into education, and two, I started working with some of our learners who have, some disabilities. Um, and so I started to really be able to understand how I learned. I'm 40. Next month, I'll be 44. For over, for my entire high school career and dropping out of college in 2003 to picking back up the mantle to get my degree in 2020, finishing in 2022, starting my master's in 2023, now nearing the completion of my master's and wanting to go and get my doctorate degree. I did not, and I wish I had known these things, because now finding them out, I have a different methodology or a different system for my own self to help me learn. So using multi-sensory approaches like combining visuals with verbal cues or demonstrating learning strategies to provide clear examples. These are things that many of my teachers and even my professors, I mean, I didn't, it's kind of weird to say now. I needed a 504 plan. I needed an IEP in high school, in middle school, in elementary, middle, high, college, and I never got those things. And so I had to struggle all of my adult life um, in learning. And people always as ask me, as you can see, I am a book hoarder. I love knowledge. And people say, man, you have such a wealth of knowledge. Why aren't you in teaching, or you in a professor? And for so many years, I couldn't answer that question. Once I got into education, understanding sensory and autism and finding myself in these things, it was like the light bulb went off, while at the same time realizing I can learn and I can actually be a part of a world that I have always looked at from a distance, saying I don't fit in. And that world was being a professor, being an educator. I never could see myself doing that. I never could see myself because I didn't understand these basic principles. So being able to give these tools to students, um, because like I said earlier, there may not be, I've heard people say that there's no such thing as a visual learner, but half of the information I know from history, and this is all honest, didn't come from the books, because I bought the books feeling one day I would be able to read them. Because I didn't understand my sensory with comprehension. I have struggled to read all my life. I didn't know. And one day I had an audio book and a novel, a fiction novel. This book right here, Will of the Many. And I had the audio book. And a little small voice said, listen and read along. And I got full sensory immersion. and I completed a 700-page book, and then read this book, Babel by R.F. Kuang, um, right after it. So I did two books in um, 2 months. I'm I'm struggling to read the book to do the books that I'm reading right now due to the fact that they're kind of boring to me. But if it wasn't for those sensory things, I wouldn't realize that, hey, I can read, I can retain. Because before it would take so much of my mental strength to read and retain. Now I can read and listen and retain, and it's not that much of a struggle. So I believe full-heartedly in incorporating visual and listening aids and other sensory objects to assist in helping our learners of any age be able to process information. Tracking. So tracking, conduct regular assessments to monitor student learning, identify areas where students need extra support. So just like routing, just like a navigation, you can share your navigation with your loved one so that they can track your progress on if you're traveling. That same thing works here in education because you, and it's almost like science, you need to be able to track your experiments. You need to be able to say, hey, this worked, that didn't, this worked, that didn't. And I'm not necessarily saying experiment, but there has to be some cognitive connection with an experiment for different types of learners. If you have a classroom full of 25, 30 kids or less, hopefully less, you need, each person doesn't learn the same. Each person doesn't compute the same. Each person doesn't have the same environments, socially, economically, whatever, that nurtures education. So, how do I reach 15 different minds, different backgrounds, different histories? How do I reach that? And one way that we need to track it, just like a scientist in an experiment. They have to track what doesn't happen in order to reach the goal. Isn't that how we discovered penicillin? It wasn't because we were looking for penicillin, it was for something else. So in that tracking, same thing with I want to say gasoline, I think, but I'm not quite sure. Oil, gas, something like that. It was a byproduct, one or the other, gasoline or something. It was a byproduct of something else. So you have to be able to track each student and what works for each one. That's something I couldn't put my finger on when I first started in education, but now I'm starting to get a better grasp. So conducting regular assessments, that doesn't mean test the kids out the wazoo. It means you can do um, heat checks. Actually heard that word today from a educator. You can do a heat check just to see where the kids are, um, identifying areas. Those assessments, that tracking allows you to know what percentage of the students or which particular students have the ability or not have the ability are picking up what you're putting down. So tracking is very, very important. All right. Lastly, implementing these strategies improves learning outcomes. Patience, creativity, adaptability are key to success. And that is, to be honest, that's it in a nutshell. Not saying that these particular strategies that I've laid out are going to get the job done, but saying that these strategies can assist in helping our learners to become better at learning. Also, giving them the tools to be able to use as they grow and mature and be able to take these particular tools throughout their learning experience. And one thing I don't want to keep saying that it was difficult for me, um, because I never got it. I never had it for myself. Nobody ever, I'm gonna say nobody ever did, but I didn't have it for myself. And that is the patience that you have to be able to have with yourself as the educator and the students as those that are learning. You got to have the patience with yourself to keep working on different strategies. Not every strategy fits everybody. You know, I don't. I'm a one of one. That means none before me and none to come. That's a Jay-Z line. Um, so you can't apply any strategy that has worked for a mass amount of people for me. Not saying that there aren't elements of those strategies that won't work, but I'm my brain processes things differently. So the educator needs to be patient. The student needs to be patient with themselves, as well as the educator needing to be patient with themselves as as both parties develop and learn and grow. Um, and taking it step by step to accomplish the goal. So, anyway, I hope this works. I actually hope this recorded, and I'll be sending you the link.h. Deuces.